Most poor people in this country have computers, have big screen TVs, have cars, have air conditioning. This myth that there are kids who don't have anything to eat is a total lie.
Robert, I'm just going to give our viewers a quick run-through of what items poor families in America have. 99% of them have a refrigerator.
But there is a reason for poverty in America. There's almost always a reason attached to it. It's usually personal responsibility or something like that.
Look, people in extreme poverty have it bad in this country. But here's the thing, I need this to be about me somehow, so let's look at that income bracket. Subscribe to my Patreon, by the way. I earn $12 an hour working full-time in the film industry, a life of luxury I know. However, I work for a small company and am hired as an independent contractor, meaning I don't get any time off, sick days, or health insurance. Living like this as an adult and having a car payment, rent, and other adult costs, it's made me realize something. Everything about daily life for people who work paycheck to paycheck is built to keep you exactly where you are. Our economy is centered around bleeding people dry, with high interest payments, late fees, and so on. The thing is, I'm one of the lucky ones. I don't have any student debt or medical conditions that you know of. There's plenty of people who are above the poverty line who spend half of their income on insulin just to stay alive. I'm sure you've heard by now about the Federal Reserve findings, the statistic that claims 40% of Americans couldn't afford a $400 emergency. But you probably haven't heard from that same study that 17% were unable to pay their current month's bills regardless. Not to mention the 1 in 4 Americans that skipped necessary medical care in 2018 because they couldn't afford it. Half of Americans make between $25,000 and $30,000 per year, an amount of income that can definitely provide luxuries like a refrigerator, but often can't provide larger luxuries like healthcare or housing. When it comes down to it, we're a country that's perpetually running on empty, but we've glossed over the struggles of average people with cheaply priced creature comforts. As a society, we've been trained to view luxuries as a hierarchy. There's food, healthcare, and housing, basic essentials that you'd think are available to everyone. And up closer to the top, you have the new iPhones, or a PS5, or whatever boomers think is peak luxury for the privileged youths. This top section is for people who have worked their way up the pyramid. These are things you should only buy once you have the basics covered. So when we see someone talk about how much they're struggling when they have a new PS5 hooked up to their 4K TV, we're trained not to believe them. This is exactly how the wealthy people in our country want you to think, because it works both ways. It prevents the middle class from questioning the status quo, and it helps poor people convince themselves that their basic needs are met. It's the same concept as going to a gaudy hotel in Las Vegas for a night. You feel like you're doing alright when you're surrounded by the illusion of luxury, even if those luxuries are just cheaply priced commodities that advertising has brainwashed you into holding to such a high regard. Having the new iPhone is in essence the same thing. Society views it as a luxury of the rich and famous, but in reality it's a commodity you can get for an extra $30 on your phone bill every month, which makes it something poor people can use to fill the void. The fact of the matter is, this hierarchy has been flipped upside down, but nobody acts like it has. The monthly cost of a new iPhone is like $30, but the monthly cost of insulin without health insurance is over $1,000. If the pyramid was logical, your living costs would be near the top, as a one-bedroom apartment can cost thousands a month. Well, your iPhone installment plan is like a fraction of that. As a result, you have diabetics rationing insulin, having seizures and brain damage in the process, while being able to post about it on Twitter from their new iPhone 12 XDXR SE2 or whatever they're calling it these days. No wonder it looks like bad money management to boomers who have a net worth of over $100 million. The thing is, it wasn't always this way. Commodities we deem as luxuries used to actually be luxuries, and the basic things we need to live used to be priced as such.
Always the difficult goal, making our money reach out to cover more of our needings or wantings and luxuries.
In 1960, the average family income was $5,600 per year, just $466 per month. That same year, a color television cost $795. So of course, that was a luxury much more than food or housing was. You know what wasn't priced like a luxury back then? Food or housing. The average rent price back then was $71, with a house costing $11,900 or a mortgage payment of less than $60 per month. Insulin costs just $1 per vial, and while Uber obviously didn't exist, your car payment would have been just under $60. And let's say you wanted to become a lawyer in 1960, well, your tuition would have been $475. Even adjusted for inflation, that's 1,100% less than what it would cost now. I don't think I even need to go any further here. Families in 1960 were able to do exactly what conservatives in the 2020s have been claiming is so easy. You could just work a few hours during the summer to pay for college. You could just do a little overtime at work and buy a house. All of the basics were attainable. And it's not like people are being lazy these days anyway, with productivity being at an all-time high. We are more productive than ever, but are being paid less than any time in recent history. So what happened? How are we able to buy like 5 TVs on 1 month's salary below the poverty line, but are unable to rent a single apartment? Well, it's actually quite simple. Over the years, the cost of living started creeping up because property owners and executives figured out that people will pay just about anything for the basics, but will opt out of luxury items if they're too expensive. The prices of luxury items had to fall, or else people wouldn't buy them in large numbers. However, people will pay just about anything to not starve to death on the streets or be unable to find a job. So why not raise tuition and start charging your tenants just a little more rent each month? And millions of diabetic people need insulin to not fall into a coma and die, so why not start charging just a little extra each vial? Charge people as much as they can possibly pay to survive. That became the new business model. Soon enough, the extra costs artificially placed on basic items sped past inflation and wage growth. And while TVs became more and more accessible, this created the illusion of economic improvement when in reality, all that was happening was a massive redistribution of wealth. This eventually destroyed small businesses too, because overpricing basic essentials while underpricing luxury items requires having a monopoly over the market. So out went the local grocery store, and in went the thousands of Walmart supercenters. Now there are less companies to work your way up in, less businesses to start, and less competitions for higher wages. This effectively killed the American dream and the ability to become an entrepreneur and start your own small business. You know what? I'm tired of being in the 50%. I want to be in the top 1%. My ice stripper free trial is running out, and I need money now. Let's see what the various white men on beaches have to say about this.
You're a grown-ass man. I cannot and will not support you.
Those are the exact words that my roommate and one of my best friends told me as I just informed him that I couldn't pay my $380 rent bill. Today, I'm a millionaire.
Stop right there. His rent was only $380? Fuck all this millionaire shit. I want to know where he's getting rent that cheap. And I've already hit a paywall. Getting rich quick, the rags to riches story. That is the story America tells itself to justify the rags. But why is this illusion being sold to us so often? Well, because we want it to be true, and we want to be the smart and creative entrepreneur who has gamed the system. It's gotten to the point where some people want it to be true so badly that they borderline worship rich people. In the process of writing this video, I came across an entire genre of YouTube videos called success affirmations and billionaire visualizations, where you're supposed to pretend you're a rich businessman.
I am rich. I am wealthy. I love being rich. I see myself being rich. I enjoy making money.
This is ASMR for mentally ill teenage boys, and it has 1 million views. However, to a lesser extent, this is where society is at the moment. We're 1 year deep into a global pandemic. Breaking news, I know. And financially speaking, it looks like we're back in 2008. Yet we cannot give up the fantasy of becoming rich. In fact, most people fantasize about it more than ever. There's videos on YouTube with 4 million views that basically boil down to, I'm a dumb bitch from the streets and now I have an expensive car. Some of the most popular videos on this website are just endless streams of large numbers. I gave people $1 million, but only 1 minute to spend it. Last to fall wins $1 million. I bought a private island, $800,000. I gave $200,000 to people who lost their job. Wait, why only $200,000? You spent $1 million on lottery tickets, but not. Last person to leave $800,000 island keeps it. This content has 2 types of viewers. The first type is people who deep down believe they could one day be wealthy, and see Mr. Beast as an aspirational figure, a billionaire visualization. And the other type are people who don't buy into it but still find themselves mesmerized by this content. If you're in a situation where you're barely scraping by, watching someone spend tens of thousands of dollars at Walmart without even flinching is extremely engaging. It almost seems like a superpower, a state of being you can barely imagine. When every grocery store trip consists of running a cost-benefit analysis between paying off medical debt or getting enough food, it's almost impossible to imagine what it would be like to walk into that same store with money being no object. This only works to a certain point though. If you go a bit too long without making a charity video, your brand image starts to slip. And if this country's economy keeps getting worse, people are gonna start really hating these YouTubers. If people start going days without eating only to watch Mr. Beast eat golden ice cream for 10 minutes, someone's gonna build a guillotine. And having to install a security perimeter around your YouTube gang, now that wouldn't be a very engaging video, now would it? In order to have economic mobility, the ability to start with rags and end in riches, you need to have a country and an economy that supports this, and America has neither. As it stands right now, less than half of Americans are making more than their parents did at the same age. It's almost like their parents were raised in a more economically prosperous time where basic essentials were within reach. Millennials are the most educated and productive generation in modern history, yet are suffering worse economic outcomes. And if that sounds bad, wait until you find out that college-educated millennials are far from the worst impacted right now. Lately, the winning narrative among conservatives is that you can escape economic adversity with trade school, regardless of situation. They always start with, burger flippers shouldn't be paid enough to raise a family. If you want to feed your kids, go to trade school. And if you point out how that's not practical for every poor person to go to trade school, they respond with, well, try harder then. Here's the thing, whether you like it or not, this country has tens of millions of people who cannot complete classes that may or may not result in a new job. In Eric Jensen's book, titled Teaching with Poverty in Mind, What Being Poor Does to Kids' Brains, Jensen lays out quite a few examples as to how being raised poor can negatively impact brain development and set kids on a path that they often can't claw their way back out of. 35% of poor families experience 6 or more major life events that are proven to traumatize children, such as divorce, sickness, or eviction, with just 2% of poor families experiencing none of these. The book also lays out a few examples as to how getting a bad start often sends people into a death spiral that lasts into adulthood. And when you think about it, how could it not? Even just in the context of school and development. How could you expect kids to learn anything when their only meal that day was whatever this is? When a child wakes up to their unsafe apartment every morning to a lack of parents, or worse, a traumatizing situation, their brain is going to shut down. I would know, despite being raised upper middle class, my home life had some issues, to put it lightly. And sometimes I'd go straight from learning that one of my parents ended up in jail that day to being expected to do whatever I was doing in 6th grade pre-algebra, business as usual. Let me tell you, I didn't learn it. My GPA was literally worse than the ones these rich gurus pretend they had. And while I made it out of my adolescence with some brain function left, allegedly, I also had economic resources, while children of poverty have to deal with both a lack of economic resources and a traumatizing household. If you currently hold the position that any child who comes from poverty or a difficult home life can just work their way out of their educational deficit, I invite you to take a look at the summary of the book I mentioned earlier, because reading is for people who are more intelligent than I am, so really, the summary worked really well. The reason I'm focusing on education and brain development so much is because people without these privileges are the ones filling these low-paying jobs. And these are the people our girl Jackie is demanding learn a trade to escape poverty. There's just one major problem. If you're raised poor and therefore are overwhelmingly likely to have physical, mental, and educational deficits, and likely went to an underfunded school district in a bad area, how exactly do you think these people are going to get through trade school? As of 2016, this country has 32 million adults who literally don't know how to read, so what exactly are they supposed to do? I feel like it's this point in the argument when Jackie will fumble with the TV tuner in the back of her brain and visualize a Lifetime movie moment where the poor single parent just works really hard and does some night classes or something, and now they have a house. The problem is, if you're a single parent and you're capable of taking night classes, doesn't it make more sense just to work 2 jobs instead? If your child needs diapers and formula right now, are you really going to sacrifice that so you can work through your educational opportunities? No matter what you do, time you spend in school could be spent working towards survival. And most people would rather make some money now than more money later if they're currently starving or don't have their needs met. And even if every major company did let their employees work their way up, there's way less management jobs at McDonald's than there are adults working as essential workers. I mean fry cooks. So how do you fix this? Well, in countries with more regulation and welfare services that aim to decrease the cost of living, we see a higher level of economic mobility, with America being on par with Pakistan. Unfortunately, many people don't consider welfare services as a viable option and would rather just claim everyone is too lazy, and that's why they're poor.
Progressive politicians love to talk about raising the minimum wage. It makes them sound caring, compassionate, concerned. They're on the side of the worker, standing against the greedy employer.
Guys, we can't pay people minimum wage. Think of the millionaire business executives. What about their issues? Oftentimes, the debate around poverty isn't about facts or figures. It's about a narrative. The narrative unfortunately pushed by society is that you can work your way up in really any business. You start your career flipping burgers at 16, and before you know it, you're a 50-year-old fast food CEO. If upward movement in companies still worked like this, their logic would make sense. I mean, if you ignore how the economy works and assume every teenager in the workforce is just doing it for spending money and not helping their family survive. You see this concept echoed most intensely on conservative media outlets like Fox News. You especially heard this from Fox News commentator Bill O'Reilly back when he was actually on Fox News. We all know how that went.
But yet some Americans, and that's what my next question is to you, why do they think they're owed all this by the government? What is that mentality? I don't get that. I never took a penny from the government.
So Democrats believe that people are entitled to certain things. They're entitled to health care. They're entitled to food. They're entitled to some basic necessities of life. What you call free stuff that actually are necessities in life. A lot of the people who receive welfare, even the adults, are working poor. They're people who have jobs, but they don't have enough money to get
that
food.
Myth has been busted time and time and time again.
It's not a myth.
If you look at the studies of poverty,
at least 50% are working.
If you look at the studies of poverty, most poor people in this country have computers, have big screen TVs, have cars, have air conditioning. This myth that there are kids who don't have anything to eat is a total lie. And
it is absolutely not a lie.
It is absolutely a total lie on a mass level.
City. There are kids in New York City who go all weekend without anything to eat except when they eat in the schools.
That is such a biggest baloney.
Absolutely a fact.
You
and
produce
I know it's
one.
a fact.
You produce one.
I know. I know that because of the churches that I've worked with in New York City who serve those children.
This logic only works if you believe two things which are not true at all in the slightest. One, that upward mobility is something that's in reach for everyone, and two, that poverty is comfortable enough to settle into when you have a lack of ambition. I've already gone into detail on the first idea, so let's focus on the idea that poverty is comfortable. If Bill O'Reilly believed that poverty was a horrible experience, he would have to forgo the concept of upward mobility, because anyone would choose to work their way up over literal starvation. So how livable is poverty? Well, if you go by the census, you'd have to make $12,000 a year or less to be below the poverty line. A number so low, I downloaded the official census spreadsheet because I thought I was seeing numbers from 1980. I don't think I need to break it down for you. The average one-bedroom apartment in this country costs $1,078 per month, with my state costing over $1,700 per month average for the whole state. Considering at this level you would make $1,000 per month before taxes, I'm not sure what the Census Bureau expects you to do. Maybe start an OnlyFans? I know I've considered that.
Most people in America, even people in poverty, live very well. You know the studies that poor people in America have air conditioning, have cars, have big screen TVs.
Bill, William, if I may, have you ever stopped to consider how utilities like air conditioning were acquired? Maybe, just maybe, these are features of large and cheap housing complexes. And while air conditioning could be a luxury in a house, most poor people live in large complexes of other poor people. Also, if I open Facebook Marketplace, a concept you are probably unfamiliar with, seeing as you're... Okay, if you navigate to Craigslist on the World Wide Web, you can often find big screen TVs for free, so that's not really much of a luxury either at this point. I feel like I'm running out of ways to even debunk these people. At this point, if you think it's possible to live comfortably while poor, you really haven't given it any thought. Even if you make double the poverty line at $2,000 a month, you still couldn't pay for an average one-bedroom apartment and other normal adult expenses. And like, you could just trust me on this one, Karen. You can rest assured those filthy, filthy poors in the next town over, they're not having 80 kids as we speak right now to, defraud the government out of welfare. Using your pussy as a child rearing factory is not worth an extra $16 of food stamps. Like, if you have lots of kids, it's not profitable to be relying on the government because the poverty line is still set really low, even if you have like 5 kids. And yet, when I argue with these people online, they always go back to the nobody who works in food service, ew, disgusting, should be paid $15 or $20 an hour. Think of the small businesses. And yeah, Morgan, small businesses would struggle to pay $20 an hour. The reason for this being large corporations are not being broken up, regulated, or even taxed at a responsible rate. Wealth has been redistributed away from small businesses and individuals and placed into the hands of like 100 people who gain trillions of dollars of collected wealth on a yearly basis. We can't tax break our way out of this one. We're gonna have to actually do something here. But I can tell you this now, paying single mothers less than they would have made in 1960 is not a good start. The problem is, I think they kind of know this, but just hate poor people. After this guy called me a dreamer without experience after a heated Twitter discourse moment, I said I'm salaried and work an office job, which isn't 100% true. I work off shitty independent contractor pay in the film industry, but whatever. But immediately after I said that I work an office job, he backed off, never responding again after I sent him some economic data. Jackie, on the other hand, settled at, not all jobs deserve $15 an hour, in response to which I'd ask why. Why shouldn't everyone make that much money, seeing as it's a fraction of what we should be making now? Well, I know why. It's because they want to preserve the distance their wages have from the burger flippers. They think poorly of people working hourly wage jobs at McDonald's, and they feel better about their own career choices if there's at least $10 to $20 an hour separating them from the burger flippers. Whenever I look at these people's profiles, it's always the same. They're usually middle-aged, upper middle class, and post about their various car projects, or whatever else rich boomers like, I don't even know at this point. This is the demographic that hates poor people, and unfortunately, this is the demographic that holds the most power in this country. Wealthy, middle-aged white people. Anyway, that'll be it for this video. I want to know what you guys had to say, so leave a comment down below. I read all of my comments, and they help promote this video in the YouTube's algorithm, so it's always helpful to get likes and comments, engagement. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.